Whether or not the Colts make the playoffs is up to them, but a couple of bulls up front might make a huge difference. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. What is up, everybody? I am Jake Arthur, and he is Zach Hicks. You know, the two of us from horseshoehuddle.com. And today we're here to discuss the Colts' playoff chances. They got 3 games left, but there's also a couple somewhat silent superstars on the defensive side of the ball that have been a huge catalyst for this team at points when they're there on the season, but they're also going to carry a lot of weight in these last few games as well. But let's just look at the Colts as a whole right now. In the thick of the AFC playoff race, still at 8-6, it has thinned out a little bit, but they're tied with the Jaguars and the Texans right now. You know, a little logjam there in the AFC South. And when there's this many teams still in it, you know, there's several teams still within a game of them, you just have to worry about yourself. You can't scoreboard watch right now. The Colts do have the 6th easiest remaining strength of schedule in the AFC, according to Tankathon. Their opponents have a 476 winning percentage, and they're within one game of 4 of those other 5 teams. The Chiefs, the Bills, the Broncos, and the Jaguars all have slightly easier schedules. So the Colts just got to kind of focus on themselves when it comes to Atlanta, the Raiders, and the Texans. Zach, how are you feeling over this final month?
Yeah, you know, the whole reason why we wanted to start this show with that exact statement right there, where the Colts need to focus on themselves, because Sunday did not go the Colts' way whatsoever in terms of helping them. I mean, there was a 5-minute span where the Houston Texans kicked a game-winning field goal in overtime, just as the Bears failed on a Hail Mary against the Browns. So all the help that the Colts could have gotten on Sunday, like within a 5-minute span, completely evaporated. And those two teams remained at 8-6 for the Texans, and I believe the Browns are 9-5 right now, and they also have that head-to-head on the Colts as well. So it doesn't look like the Colts are catching the Browns anytime soon whatsoever. But if we're looking at this remaining schedule, the Colts just need to take care of business. We can scoreboard watch every single Sunday. Every time the Colts win, we can scoreboard watch other teams, but the Colts, as it sits right now, according to New York Times projections for the playoffs, the Colts have a 99.9% chance of making the playoffs if they win out. So if they win all 3 of these games, it's like a 99.9% chance of making the playoffs. And then even if they lose this week to Atlanta and they win their last 2 games, it's a 93% chance, I believe, through the New York Times model. So the Colts need to take care of business. If they're going to lose any of them, they can lose this weekend. But again, just take care of business. Leave no doubt, win all 3 of these games, get in the playoffs, escape that log jam or any of those crazy tiebreakers by taking care of business against these bad teams. And look, the Colts have been doing this all year when it comes to teams below 500. I mean, every single loss they have this year has been to a team at 500 or above 500. So these next 2 games against Atlanta and against Vegas are 2 teams below 500, where the Colts, as of right now, are undefeated against those type of teams this year. They need to take care of business. The Falcons are coming off of a brutal loss to the Carolina Panthers, obviously the worst team in football. Vegas is coming off a really weird 2-week stretch, like a really, really weird 2-week stretch where they lost 3-0 and then won 63-21 against the hapless Chargers. But those are 2 winnable games still for the Colts. Like, those are 2 teams that the Colts need to beat to get ready for that big showdown in week 18 against Houston Texans. But they can't just look ahead to that matchup. Again, they got to take care of business these next 2 weeks just to get to that matchup. But no, an 11-win season is on the horizon for the Colts, but it all comes down to them taking care of business. They can't have a big letdown game like they did against the Bengals 2 weeks ago, or like they did against the Saints earlier in the season. These next 2 games, they need to show up, they need to play, they need to take care of their own destiny and not leave it up to chance by dropping one of these final games. It has to be win out. Every single game has to be a playoff game for the Colts going forward for them to make the actual playoffs here in the next couple weeks.
Well, another part of that is winning the AFC South has become more and more of a possibility. So not only could they get into a wild card spot, but winning the division will get you a home game as well. So
yeah.
I mean, they don't need to win the division. I mean, Jacksonville still has Carolina and Tennessee on their remaining
and
3
Tampa
games.
And Tampa too. So it's unlikely to win the division, but there's a possibility. But at the end of the day, all the Colts can do right now is win out. You can win out, and the rest, you can leave the rest up for chance. Like, it doesn't matter what happens with the rest of the league around you. The Colts just need to win out. Win all these games, take it one game at a time. Say, okay, we need to beat Atlanta. Okay, we need to beat Vegas. Okay, we need to beat this big matchup against Houston. And then whatever happens around the league happens. It doesn't really matter. Just get into the dance, whether it's a wild card, whether it's a 7 seed, whether it's the 4 seed or the 3 seed. It doesn't really matter as much. Just get into the dance and take care of business and win out. I think this Colts team is ready for it. I mean, what they did after that first quarter in that Pittsburgh game tells me that they are ready for this challenge in front of them. But it's just still about putting pen to paper and actually getting it done. But they very well can do it. I mean, again, the schedule looks nice for them. They match up well with each of these 3 teams. So I think they can do it. But, we've seen Colts teams in this position before. So hopefully Shane Steichen can break that curse like he did with the Steelers curse this past weekend.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, 11 wins is very possible. That'd be the first time since the first few years of the Andrew Luck era. And this isn't exactly the team you would have picked to do it either, this edition of the Colts. But still, 10 wins seems probable. Like you mentioned, all 3 games winnable. Atlanta 6-8, 19th offensively, 10th defensively. Their defense has been but don't break. They're capable of making some big plays there, some timely plays. Both their offense and defense. Offense has scored less than 14 points in 4 games. Defense has given up less than 14 points in 4 games. So do with that what you will. Defense obviously outweighing there. Las Vegas, like you mentioned, very, very weird team. Still ranks 29th offensively, 17th on defense. Where are they? Are they the team that lost 3-0 to, was it, I forget who it was.
Vikings.
The Vikings. Or the team that absolutely killed the Chargers. Now, the Chargers team probably had checked out and they didn't really look ready to play at all. But 63 points in the NFL, 63 points. I'm kind of glad that the Colts see that in the upcoming opponent, because it gives no opportunity to take a team lightly that scored 63 points. Mm-hmm. And then Houston is just really solid. 10th offensively, 6th defensively. They've got a decent pass rush. Will Anderson is a terrorist when it comes to right tackles, and CJ Stroud is obviously the offensive rookie of the year. And even without Tank Dell, Noah Brown stepping up and Nico Collins stepping up. Nico Collins had a huge game against the Colts in week 2. Mm-hmm. So that's the toughest one. And honestly, I think everyone is really looking forward to that one, because that's a playoff game right there. Week 18 is a playoff game. So that'll be a fun one. I really think everyone wants to see a win and you're in scenario for either of those teams.
Yeah, but again, at the end of the day, we can view that game as a potential playoff game, but every game is a playoff game for the Colts until the actual playoffs. Like, there's no room. Like again, they can maybe afford to drop this next one to the Falcons, but what does that do to you going into the last 2 that you lost if you lose to a team that just lost to the Panthers? Like, you have to take care of business this week. Every single game the rest of the way is a playoff game. You have to view it like you're losing, you're out down the stretch here, or you're just not going to have the mentality to make the playoffs. I think this Colts team is going to be ready, but they just can't afford to be off their A game in any of these last 3 games. They got to take care of business, get to 11 wins. And the rest is, whatever happens around the league happens. They just got to get into the playoffs with those 11 wins and then go from there.
Yeah, one surefire way to lose these type of must-win games is not being able to stop the run. So next, we're going to talk about a big reason why the Colts are now able to stop the run once again. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you're actually going to have. I personally love Gametime because if I feel like being spontaneous or going to a show or something on a whim, I can go right there and find the best options, cheapest price, best views, whatever. My wife and I have started talking about some of the concerts we're going to go to next year. You don't have to go to everything, short term. You can go months out, and Gametime is still going to have the best options for you. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps and you're all set. The tickets are sent directly to your phone as well, so you don't have to fumble in a long line and you start getting a cold sweat because you're getting anxiety. Everyone's bearing down on you. Don't worry about it. They're already on your phone. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Alrighty, and Locked On Colts listeners, remember Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Now, Jake, obviously going into this second segment where we talk about some trench players on the Colts defense side of the ball. I mean, I think it's a great time to talk about the Colts trench players because they're coming off a game where I feel like every single player up front was simply dominant. I mean, I can't think of a single player who didn't show up in this game. Even Kwity Paye, who was kind of quieter than most players, and then still had a couple tackles for a loss and a couple hurries in this game. DeForest Buckner was all over the place. Tyquan Lewis had a great game as well. Samson Ebukam had a couple sacks. Like, this Colts defensive line just abused the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I wanted to focus in this first segment here about on a player that came back from suspension and drastically changed the entire scope of the Colts defense. Now, obviously, they had the blowout against Cincinnati Bengals, but in these prior 2 games with Grover Stewart back in the lineup, the Colts are back to allowing just 3.4 yards per carry. You can obviously see the difference on the field. I mean, when he's on the field, teams are not running the ball like they were during his absence, those 6 games that he was out. And I mean, it's such a huge, I've never seen a player, especially even a defensive player like this, where the on-off splits are so massive. Like we all went into like the Tennessee game or other games like that being like, oh gosh, we don't have Grover Stewart. They're going to run all over us. And it's not like the Titans have this potent rushing attack. I mean, Derrick Henry just had 20 touches for 10 yards against the Texans this past week. But when he played against the Colts without Grover Stewart, it was back to being King Henry. But now you get Grover Stewart back in the lineup in 2 games against the Bengals and the Steelers, 3.4 yards per carry. I believe it's 51 carries for 177 total yards rushing by running backs the past 2 weeks against the Colts. I mean, the on-off splits with Grover Stewart are just massive. And I know his agent is going to be bringing that into contract negotiations this offseason because he's such a core piece of this defense. And you could see it. Like there's proof right in front of us. With Grover Stewart, without Grover Stewart, this Colts run defense and just defense in general is drastically different.
Yeah, and I mean, he occupies blockers. He allows things to flow for his teammates everywhere. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. With him in the lineup, the Colts allow 108.3 yards per game on the ground over the whole course of the season. Right now, that would rank 13th in the NFL. Without him, they give up 153 yards on the ground, which is dead last, comfortably dead last. So that just goes to show you that's a huge margin. That's upper half of the NFL versus easily the worst. It's obvious. Like I thought against the Steelers, he really looked comfortable, and he really looked back. Like there were times against the Bengals where I was like, he's getting there, but against the Steelers, he looked like Grover Stewart again. And Pro Football Focus has taken notice as well. They've given him a 74.3 this season, which is the best of his career. He's only got the half sack on the year, but he's got 10 pressures and 20 stops, which is a statistic they made up to essentially say this player forced a failure of a play against the offense. So, I mean, only half the season basically, but he's doing really well. And they're going to need that sort of dominance, not just from him, but the effect he has on the whole front seven. Because you could see EJ Speed played out of his mind as well, and that's got to be a big help.
Yep.
So in these next few games, if they got to take care of business, like we mentioned at the top, then having someone who's able to be a linchpin against the run, that's going to be huge.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned EJ Speed because that's really where I wanted to go with this segment too. During his 6-game absence, I felt like the Colts linebackers' overall play took a big step back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that they were all horrendous, like the worst players ever. Like they're still having really good games here and there, but for the most part, the Colts linebacker play and just the linebacker impact was not what it was when Grover Stewart was in the lineup early in the season. You saw Zaire Franklin's tackles drop. You saw EJ Speed have a couple of rough outings. He had a really rough game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in his first game starting. And then against Tennessee Titans, he's had a couple of missed tackles as well. Now you flash forward to what he just did on Saturday against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and EJ Speed looked like a superstar. He was crashing down the line super hard. He was getting in the backfield. He had multiple tackles for a loss. He had the forced fumble. He had a lot of run stops in this game. EJ Speed looked like a fantastic starting linebacker. And he was playing with so much speed and aggression and just confidence because you have a Grover Stewart in there. You know that you're not going to get reached by a lineman. You know that you have the freedom to fly in there and make these big plays in the backfield. So just having Grover Stewart out there, it's great to have his impact and not getting driven back every single play at the nose tackle position, but just what it does for these linebackers. It gives them confidence. It gives them the aggression that you need to play the position, and that's what leads to more of these run stops. It's not necessarily Grover Stewart doing it all by himself, but just because he is on the field, you see the impact on EJ Speed. You see the impact on Zaire Franklin. You see the impact on DeForest Buckner, too. Like, DeForest Buckner was basically like his run grade was going down every single week without Grover Stewart in there. He was making a couple flash plays here and there, but he was getting driven back too because he was facing more double teams. With Grover Stewart back in the lineup, you're seeing DeForest Buckner make those splash plays, but also be strong in his assignment and be sturdy up front and allowing those linebackers to come in as well. So Grover Stewart just has this big ripple effect on that front seven, and he's the missing piece that puts it all together. Now, obviously, you're not getting much as a pass rusher from him, but in the run defense and what really puts this whole run defense together is Grover Stewart's impact. And we saw it this past weekend against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Colts dominated the trenches against the pass and against the run in this one, but I don't think they get it done against the run if Grover Stewart is not in the lineup. So just having him back, man, it's a big reason why they won that game. It's a big reason why they shut out the Steelers after that first quarter in this past game, because they have Grover Stewart's impact to keep the Steelers in second and long, third and long, keep them behind the sticks, and it's all over from there. The Colts pass rush did the rest after that, but I don't know if the Colts get it done without Grover Stewart in this past game.
Yeah, and we were talking about, at the top games that, if you can lose one, it's the Atlanta game, but you really can't lose any. But Atlanta's a pretty productive ground team.
Oh yeah.
They've got Bijan Robinson, obviously is the flashiest player there, really productive. But you're going to need this in order to combat them. Same with Las Vegas. They're not all that productive, but we know what they can do. But you're just going to need that stuff, and that's the pass rush as well to disrupt Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke, whoever it's going to be. They don't know yet. But Atlanta stands no chance if they're not able to establish the run, because I really don't think that Desmond Ridder or, again, Taylor Heineke is just going to paint the secondary of the Colts if there's no ground game. So Grover being back is huge, and should help the Colts get that bonus win. The one game they can afford to lose. If they get that win, then, huge feather in their cap towards the postseason chances.
Right, exactly. Now, coming up, guys, we're going to keep our focus on the Colts' defensive trenches and talk about a certain hurricane that has been crashing offensive lines over the past couple weeks. And I really think there's some superstar potential in this player. We're going to talk about him here in just a second. But first, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Now, guys, I have been on both sides of the hiring process, and I know as someone who's had to make hires for a business, LinkedIn is the perfect place to find the qualified candidates that you need. But LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Alrighty, Jake. We've been putting this big topic off for way too long. The breakout of Dio Oeno. I mean, it has been something to watch this year. I'm not saying it's happening every single week. I'm not saying that he's getting, 2 sacks. Or he's had the big explosive games, but it's not been every single game. But when he has those explosive games, he is an absolute game wrecker. Dio Oeno this past weekend had 1.5 sacks. He had 1 sack taken away as well for a defensive holding penalty. Yeah. I believe PFF said he had a 27.4% win percentage, win rate in this past game as well. Honestly, if you're watching the film, especially in the second half, it feels like it's like a 70% win percentage. I mean, he is in the backfield every single play. And this isn't the first game we've seen him be an absolute game wrecker like this. We saw it against the Patriots. We saw it against the Carolina Panthers as well. We've seen it in flashes here and there. We saw it last year, obviously, against Zach Martin in that Cowboys game too. But now we're at the point where we're looking at the accumulative stats of Dio Oeno through 14 games this year. And you're looking at 8 tackles for a loss, 8 sacks, 16 QB hits, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. I mean, he's a big part of this Colts pass rush. He's second on the team in sacks right now behind a starter. I mean, Samson Ebukam is an every down player. Dio Oeno kind of rotates in a little bit. He's not an every single down player. Like he's a substantial piece to this team. Like, don't get me wrong. He's not coming in for just 20% of the snaps, but he's not an every single down player. And he's second on the team in sacks, and he's being really productive, whether he's rushing from the edge or the interior. I really think, I mean, when you look at the flashes and you look at what he's able to put together in totality this year, I think the sky's the limit for this young player. Like, he's not even near what he can be. But when you see those flashes, when you see him, slow his explosion off the line to kind of just add that extra dimension to his rush, and then hit a dude with a cross chop and turn the corner, and then you see him rush from the inside and overpower a guy with a bull rush, and then you see a nice little rip inside move to finish for a sack. It's like, this guy really can be like a 15, 16 sack player. I mean, he's at 8 sacks this year and realistically could get to 10 without being an every down player. And with him still scratching the surface of what he can be, what's he going to be in the next year or two? I mean, I feel like we have to, like, this isn't even just homerism right now. I mean, just looking at Dio Oeno's film this year, it's like, this is next level stuff. Like, this can be like a Zadarius Smith or a Preston Smith type player here in the NFL. And I'm so excited about the future. I mean, I was always kind of sold on Dio, but this year, man, oh my gosh, I am very, very sold, because when he wins as a pass rusher, he wins quick. It's like, boom, yeah. He is past that player and he's getting to the quarterback. So Dio Oeno, man, I just had to have this kind of segment after this past game he had, but he's been doing this for the last 6-7 weeks. So he's just been on fire for this Colts team.
Yeah, and I really don't think it's a stretch to say that we're looking at the start of something really, really productive long term, because this is not coming up randomly. He went from a player who used to just win with effort and hustle and chaos to now he's winning in a variety of different ways with a plan. And he's being really productive that way and consistent. There's not like long stretches, 3-4 games apart where he's having big performances. Like, they're coming more and more consistently. And from guys we've talked about, Eddie McGilbra is someone we've talked to multiple times, guy who coaches Quiddy, Dio, and Ebukam. From what he says, from what other people who train with Dio say, they have seen this coming. Like, the guy is moving around differently when he's out there training, and it was just a matter of time until this began to happen. So this is not random. And again, this is year 3. The first year was a red shirt year, essentially, because of the Achilles. This is right on time. Like, he's becoming a really, really significant part of the Colts defense. And one of the biggest parts to me what makes him more important is that he's part of that second wave. Like he's being this productive behind guys who are already productive. So what Chris Ballard always dreamed his pass rush would be, Dio is why. Because Kwity and Ebukam first, Kwity is third on the team in sacks, I believe. And then Dio's right there second with the second wave of pass rushers. Like the plan is working because they've got really, really good players. And Dio might wind up being the best of them all.
Yeah. No, that's really where I want to go with this. I mean, when you look at Dio Dangbo, there's not many, like, I'm not trying to say that he's not an effort player, but there's not many that are like low quality sacks that are like effort sacks, you know, where you run down the guy and he steps out of bounds 1 yard short of the line of scrimmage and you get that sack, you know, or the quarterback slides down because he's feeling some pressure and they chart it to the player. You know, he's not getting those sacks. His sacks are high quality wins. Yeah. They are sacks where he is beating a guy within half a second and the quarterback's getting leveled because they're just not expecting it to happen. I mean, he's had, I think, 2 or 3 sacks too taken away by defensive penalties this year as well. Like he's constantly disruptive. And when he's getting these sacks, they are high quality sacks. So if you give him more snaps and he's just out there more and he starts getting more of those, like, you know, those cheapo effort sacks, you know, like Josh Allen in week 1 against the Colts, where 2 of his 3 sacks against Anthony Richardson came on Anthony Richardson just not throwing the RPO and running out of bounds 1 yard short.
Yeah.
You know, if he starts getting some of those too, again, I think a 15, 16 sack season is realistic for him because he's doing this right now without those kind of sacks. Like again, I don't mean to compare the players too much. Like Kwity Paye, a lot of his sacks are crashing the pocket, getting the effort sack, running through guys while he's crashing his side, and then just finishing the play. But Dio Dangbo, it's clean beat up front within 1 second, 2 seconds, and make your way to the quarterback. Like there's just some high level stuff on film from Dio that makes me think that this is just scratching the surface. I mean, he's 23 years old too. He's only 2 years removed from that major Achilles injury. We've seen the production increase every single year. He went from 1 sack in year 1, 5 sacks last year, 8 sacks this year. Where's he going to be by this time next year? You know, when he's a bigger part of the defensive line, the bigger part of the pass rush, another year of development, hitting that 24 where he's still growing as a young man. Like you have to be excited about this. Like, again, I'm not trying to be too homery here, but like, this is not normal what you're seeing from this kind of young player. The flashes you're seeing, him cleanly beating Broderick Jones constantly with cross chops as a 285-pound edge rusher. Like he's sitting in the wide 9 coming off the edge and hitting cross chops on a first round tackle. Like that's not normal. Like this is not normal whatsoever. Right. I'm seeing him turn the corner on cross chops and dip moves at 285 pounds. And I'm like, what am I watching here? This like, it's one thing if this were Kwity Paye or Samson Ebukam doing this, but again, this is a 285-pound player who plays a lot of 3-tech for the Colts. This isn't normal whatsoever. He was winning off the edge in this past game and with speed and power. So, I mean, when you watch a kind of game that Dio Dangbo just had, it's hard not to envision a future superstar there. Like he still has some rough moments around the edges. Like his PFF grade is low because he's not a great run defender. Right now he has good moments of run defense, but it's not all the way there yet. But if you're going to give me this as a pass rusher, I don't care about your run defense. Like just come in for the, you know, Kwity Paye is a fantastic run defender. Keep him out there for run defense. Give me all the Dio snaps as a pass rusher, because if he keeps doing what he did on Sunday or on Saturday, and he does what he did, you know, against Carolina and against New England, I mean, we could be looking at a star player. Like I am fully sold on what this player can be, because I just don't see players move like this. And he's really putting it together in terms of what he wants to do on every snap. Dio Dangbo, I mean, again, on Saturday, the film was so good that I just can't come away from that thinking that he's going to be anything less than a star player for the Colts.
Yeah. And I mean, the context everywhere for him is positive, because I believe when the Colts drafted Kwity and Dio, Jim Irsay told them, you know, we envision you guys like Freeney and Mathis getting those sacks on 3rd and 4th down, getting those sacks with the last 2 minutes of the game. And that's happening. Like these big plays, even if it's not a sack, the QB pressure, the QB hit, all this stuff, they're getting a lot of those in crunch time or critical situations. So like, again, when you look at the context of everything they're doing, the trio, just him, whatever, it's all good. But like you mentioned, still ascending. Like The ceiling is crazy. What does it look like next year? Shoot, 3 games left, 12 sacks. I mean, that's 5 more in the next 3 games. But I mean, the Texans have had games where they've given up 1 million sacks. I mean, Atlanta and Las Vegas aren't the best offensive lines in the world. Like, this could be a pretty eye-popping season for him nationally. Like, people are going to have to pay attention when they see his final stat line. Like, they're going to see big sacks from the TJ Watts, Myles Garrett's and everything. But when they see this reserve lineman from the Colts with 10, 11, 12 sacks, they're like, wow, where did this come from? And he's going to start getting more attention for it.
Yep. And then again, I think next year is going to be this insanely explosive year for Dio Oeno. But again, we're focused on this year, guys. We're going to keep covering this Colts push to the playoffs. It starts with the Atlanta Falcons this week, but again, we got to keep going from there. Before we clock out here today, guys, remember to check out the Locked On Sports Today YouTube channel, which is the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And if you guys don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, at Zach Hicks 2, all on X. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We'd love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll see you guys back here bright and early tomorrow morning.